A Tagalic Filipino, that is, what would result if the national language became so altered that Tagalog branches out into two languages, first, Tagalog proper and second, Tagalic Filipino. In theory, such language will be constitutional, as it is well, not Tagalog, hence fulfilling the basic requirement of the Constitution, but will it be effective? This is the current course of the national language and what KWF is pretending to have achieved. The possibility of a Tagalic Filipino is also the reason why Tagalog should have a different standard from the national language. Though it has its own sets of rationale, but that's one of it. While it is somewhat unlikely that the so-called Filipino language as we know today will diverge anytime soon from the Tagalog language, and perhaps that event is even outside the lifetime of most of us, it isn't impossible to happen. Yes, languages can emerge from dialects, much like the Romance languages have emerged from Latin, the language originating from Rome, hence the name. Given enough effort and time, Filipino can definitely be a different language from Tagalog, and it will definitely be through effort to distinguish itself. In this video, we will be exploring the difference in a possible Tagalic Filipino and Luzviminsao, the project of Luzviminsao project. Number 1. Grammar. Since Tagalic Filipino will ultimately stem from the modification of the Tagalog language, the fundamental grammar and structure of Tagalog is likely to remain as most modifications they try to do with the national language pertain to its lexicon, hence you will still see familiar case markers such as ang, nong, and sa, as well as conjunctions such as at, the hill, kaya, and so on. Luzviminsao, on the other hand, is a meticulous and tedious process of comparing Philippine languages in order to find similarities that we can utilize to not only make it easy and intuitive to learn, but will also have a propedeutic effect on learning other Austronesian languages, especially Philippine languages. Hence Luzviminsao will be more difficult than Tagalic Filipino, at least to those who only know Tagalog, but since it is ultimately based on many languages it will still be easier. The more languages you know, and many Filipinos do know about 2 or 3 local languages. Number 2. Lexicon. Tagalic Filipino can and will only be achieved if the core vocabulary of the national language is substantially altered. What the KWF is doing is simply superficially altering the national language, and the core of Tagalog language remains. This is like pouring Coke in the ocean and hoping it will one day turn into Coke. Do take note that dagtum, kunig, and kahel as found in University of the Philippines Filipino Dictionary are not entries for the national language. This is why even though there are differences in dialects of Tagalog in Bulacan, Cavite, Manila, and so on, they remain to be under one language. Hence, should a Tagalic Filipino emerge, it will have a substantially different core vocabulary than Tagalog, perhaps reversing the elision of the L sound is one of them, hence Dalan, Balay, and Bulan will be present. For anything to be a candidate in Luzviminsao, it must be present in at least 2 different branches of the Philippine languages or Samabajo languages, i.e., the word Balayes in Ilocano and Cebuano, hence is actually a Luzviminsao candidate. This is done not only in the core vocabulary, but also in the grammatical structure. Now let us see examples in both. By the way, the example in Tagalic Filipino is what might be, and the examples for Luzviminsao is not yet the final version as it is still a work in progress. First off, we start with Tagalic Filipino.
Masakit ang abaga ko dahil nagmula ako tanang maghapon. Ang maraot ay ang pinipilit mo ang sirin mo sa duma. Tuwing makusog ang bagyo di mo na mabilang ang dalugdog at kilat. Binayo ng mga tao ang nagtakaw sa may divisorya. Masakit ang aking siki dahil nagpano ako tanang aldaw. Nangan ang aso ng tulang. Maari na 5 ang tawag kasi 5 ang ramay sa 5 natin. Maasok ang paligid dahil nagsalab ng kayu sina Pedro sa likod ng balay. Hadlok ko sa dagom kaya inom ako ng inom ng danom. Minsan sa may danaw may batang namatay taulo aldaw na tangis ang kanyang inang. Mapiyang aldaw sa inyong tanan. Kasakit ng maamo ko na pang-5 na pala ang naging bana ng crush ko dati. Magkano ito? Ang kagi mo. Kung dato ka, di na nagtatanong.
How was it? Sounded and felt like Tagalog? Now for Luzviminsao.
Agtangis it mga sirin, sang tula de Luzviminsao. Nagatangis deng sirin ari ni mo ba na dungdungo. Nangawala narang sirin ari ni mo ba nakit kita? Pag-agi ti panahon nung alatang gaon. Amin mga matay reng sirin de banwa. Kadako nga mga sirin de Pilipinas apan Tagalog lamang so ginaturo de mga bata. Beken Filipino so ateng pangbanwa nga sirin tawalamen nagakagiyud kini Tagalog men ini. So komisyon sa wikang Filipino nga dapat sandran it mga tanang sirin ut banwa. Ini payud so nagabuno de ateng mga sirin. Sa dino kamen makakita nga ari makataon no paano makaduma so, dialect at language, apan sasabihan ka nga, Filipino, hay beken Tagalog? Amalgam, kuno so, Filipino, apan amin Tagalog men pangkagi? No may ada men pangkagi nga beken Tagalog ay minsa lamang gamitun no gamitun men. Paano makaduma so Filipino et Tagalog nung tanang nagakakagi ini makataw di ginakagiti kakagi niya? Nakasulat men ut konstitusyon a dapat beken Tagalog so pangbanwa nga sirin apan nanoy, Filipino, beken ba Tagalog? Sinoy ginaloko ti komisyon sa wikang Filipino? Nanoy taon kapatatada? Nung amin nangamatay sirin de banwa? Nung ala na ni ka magawa tanangamatay na sirin nimo? Mo tadak na.
It is understandable, if only a few have understood the Luzviminsao, because it is meant to be studied though it will employ lexical and grammatical features that will ultimately aid in its learning, but the complexity it entails is needed in order to facilitate the learning of other Philippine languages, which in turn will also help us in our other objective, which is preserving Philippine languages. While there is a temptation to wait for the Tagalic Filipino to emerge, it should be noted that it is almost now a century since Quezon's administration started the national language policy, and the national language remains to be Tagalog even after almost 100 years. So as a citizen of this country, will you just hope that change will eventually happen, or will you proactively act to make the change happen? The choice is yours. Luzviminsao project had made a clear choice.